The last several weeks, we have had several days of snow, then warmer days where the snow starts melting, then refreezing. Basically, a great opportunity to test out traction aids. In this video, we are going to test out these super simple traction aids and see if they really work. Are they worth the money, or are they just a gimmick? And we have a variety of different vehicles to use for our test. The test track. This hill is a fairly steep climb, and the wind has blown in a few snowdrifts, so we have a nice combination of deeper snow and lots of ice. The test vehicles. John Deere X500 multi-terrain with a selective rear locking differential. John Deere 4x6 Gator with a selective locker to drive all four rear wheels. Kubota B20 4x4 tractor, selective four-wheel drive and a selective rear locker. And finally, Yamaha Wolverine X2 R-Spec, selective four-wheel drive, full-time rear locker, and a selective electric front locker. For today's test, we will be making our own version of these from some old ratchet straps and some scrap C-channel. After I mark in a general outline of where I want to cut, I used an oxy propane cutting torch to rough it out. Remember to always look around you before you use a cutting torch. Make sure there are not any flammable items nearby where flying sparks of molten steel might accidentally land. I imagine those of you who run a flame wrench for a living are really appreciating my torch skills right about now. I have a friend who was always good at drawing and sketching. The very first time he used a cutting torch, he was cutting perfect-looking straight lines, circles, and arcs. Looked like the stuff came off a CNC torch table. I guess steady artist hands help a lot with a torch. My own skills? Yeah, not so much. I cut the old ratchet straps down to size with a hot knife. This helps melt the fibers together to keep them from fraying. And all that's left is to thread the straps through the metal pieces I cut out earlier. First up for our test, the John Deere X500 lawn tractor. First we try to climb the hill without assistance. Not getting very far, and the rear locker is not much help. In fact, just getting this thing out of the barn and over to the hill was a challenge. Let's add the traction device. It threads through the rear wheel spokes easily. We do need to check carefully for clearance between the tires and fenders. Turns out there is an obstruction with the fuel tank port on the left-hand side, so we will install both of them on the right side. It definitely helps move the tractor forward. We can get partway up the hill now. It is still slow going, and sometimes it slides back down the hill while the traction block is coming back around. I would call this a partial success, since it definitely helped. Next up, the John Deere 4x6 Gator. I was surprised with how much trouble this machine has in the snow. Even with all four rear tires locked in, it struggles for traction when you're in the slippery stuff. Let's add the traction aid. Well, turns out these wheels don't have any spokes to thread our straps through, so unfortunately they won't help with this vehicle. Next up, Kubota B20 4x4 tractor. These tires are loaded with washer fluid, which should give us some extra weight for both traction and stability. I have another video on my channel for how to do that if you are interested. Unfortunately, the ag tread on these tires is not very effective in icy conditions. If I lock in four-wheel drive and the rear locker, I can get partway up the hill, but it is very slippery and the tractor wants to slide around sideways. Let's see if the traction aids help. They are very easy to install on these big wheels with plenty of clearance. They do help some, but not as much as I'd hoped. I can get further up the hill than before, and I'm not sliding sideways as much. It does seem like slower wheel speed is more effective than lots of wheel spin when using these devices. However, during this attempt, I tore one of the ratchet straps. This was probably more due to my rough torch cut slots than a flaw in the design. Admittedly, these were pretty rough, and the straps were already worn as well. I would say this is a partial success, because they did help before I broke the device. Last in our test is the Yamaha Wolverine. Of all of our test vehicles, this one does the best unassisted. If I engage four-wheel drive, it can actually get up the hill completely all on its own. The rear axle is always locked in on this model, but I didn't need to engage the front locker at all. Now if I switch to two-wheel drive mode, we can no longer climb the hill. Let's see if the traction aids will help. We only have one left, so let's go ahead and install it. It installs to this wheel easily, although you do need to make sure the strap clears the brake disc and caliper on the inside of the wheel. Unfortunately, we didn't get very far before the other ratchet strap tore as well. Most likely, it was already pretty well thrashed from the Kubota test. Conclusion, I think for as easy as these are to install, so long as your vehicle has wheel spokes and enough clearance for the device, they definitely do help. They are not intended for leaving installed while just driving around, but mainly for just getting yourself unstuck. They do give you more traction than you have without them, so I think they would actually help you get unstuck in most situations. If you liked this video, you might also like my video on driving in snowy roads with a front-wheel drive car, and how turning off the traction control can actually help sometimes. Let's hear your favorite tricks for getting unstuck down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.